Beer. That's all right. We'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Cindy? Is that you, Cindy?
Yes.
Thank you. Jay?
Here.
Eric?
Excused?
Bart?
Here.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
I'm assuming he'll be here later, so I granted him another day, and I know he's in town, so
Okay.
we'll say excused until he shows up.
Bob?
Here. Okay, we have a quorum present. There's 4 of us in the assembly chambers and 1 assembly member on the phone. So it's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us to approval of minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the January 17th meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay, no changes to those minutes I'm seeing. Just for the record, Mr. Walhuter is with us. We'll give him a minute to sit down and then continue. We're just at the approval of minutes of the January meeting, so. Do you have any changes?
Nope.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
We'll approve those minutes as presented. It's now time for any amendments or for a motion to approve today's meeting agenda.
Mr. Mayor, could we add an item under the discussion that talks about what kind of contacts or lobbying we might want to do when we're in Juneau?
Okay. Remind me, but, okay, so any other changes? So there's one change I would like to suggest. I can't make a motion, but under this resolution where we're going to approve Senate Bill 28 for our land entitlement, I would, I guess we could change it when we get there, but we'll need a motion from somebody to add House Bill 85, which is going to be introduced tomorrow. So we can do it now, just to, someone will make the motion to amend the agenda.
Do you want to wait till we get to that point?
Either way, just so we make sure we cover it, I guess that'd work. So, any other changes to today's agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll go forward with that one amendment, maybe 2. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing. This is a public hearing for ordinance 2017-01. This is an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code, Chapter 4.12. It's for local improvements, to update from City Code to Borough Code, and to incorporate the provisions of Petersburg Borough Charter, Article 16, local improvement, into the Borough Code. So is there anybody in the audience that would like to talk during this public hearing? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. And we have a few bid awards today on our agenda. We'll handle them one at a time. The first item is A, 17-030. It's Mountain View Manor North Portico Foundation Repair Project Award Authorization. I would entertain a motion to approve that, to authorize that bid.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Walhuter to allow Mountain View Manor to award that repair project to Tamaco of Petersburg for an amount not to exceed $54,100. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Cindy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that bid award passes unanimously. The next bid award is item B, 17-031, and it's for a 350 kW standby generator replacement award authorization, and this is requested by Power Light Superintendent Joe Nelson. And that standby generator replacement project to Pacific Power is who he wants to bid it, award it to. project, it's Pacific Power Generation, and that's for an amount not to exceed $97,612. I'd entertain a motion to approve that.
So move.
Second.
Okay, moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Lynn to authorize this bid award. Any discussion? Jay?
Excuse me. Just one item for people listening at home in case they're interested. $97,612 is less than the $130,000 that was budgeted, so good money saved on that.
Okay, good point. So any other discussion on that, this bid award? Okay, clerk call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Nancy? Yes. Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Okay, that bid award passes unanimously. Is there, next item on the agenda is visitors' views related to items on today's agenda. Is there any visitors in the audience with views related to today's agenda? Okay, John, could you please come forward and state your name and who you represent?
My name is John Nurkis. I am representing myself. So an echo. I want to see 17B, changes to Borough Charter, on your agenda. And I know this is only a discussion item, but when I glance at the agenda, I see it suggested you discuss major changes in the way we locally govern, including doing away with election of planning and zoning members and appointing them by the Assembly, and giving the Assembly the authority to make changes to sales and property taxes instead of by public vote, including senior exemptions and tax caps. Concerning service areas, it suggests that the Assembly can exercise additional power on the basis that it's in the best interest of the borough. That's a lot of authority given to 7 people only. That's presently given to the general public by ballot. In the past few years, there have been multiple issues that the then City Council majority favored, but were overwhelmingly defeated by public vote. I think you have a good democratic system as is. Please do not diminish it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, John. Is there anyone else in the audience today that has views related to items on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to visitors' views unrelated to items on today's agenda. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak to anything that's not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Board, commission, and committee reports. There are none. There's 2 items under the consent agenda. The first one is Elks Lodge is asking for its liquor license to be renewed. And the second one is for the Petersburg Volunteer Fire Department to us to support them getting their 2017 gaming permit. I'd entertain a motion to approve both of the items on the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all kinds of us. There's been a motion made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Walhooter to approve the items on the consent agenda. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the items on the consent agenda pass. Report of other officers. Liz Cabrera was going to give a update, but she's on her way to Juneau. She's going to testify tomorrow at a House hearing for our land entitlement, so House Bill 85. I think it starts at like 8 in the morning. That's when the committee starts, but I think there's 2 other items on their agenda, so we will have to postpone that to a time when she's here. Next item is the mayor's report. Not much on the mayor's report again, but we're seeking letters of interest. The borough is seeking letters of interest from Petersburg residents willing to serve on the following boards and commissions until, excuse me, October 2017 municipal election. There's 2 seats on the hospital board, and letters of interest may be addressed to the borough clerk and emailed to d.thompson@petersburgak.gov or mailed to Box 329, Petersburg, Alaska 99833. Excuse me, or dropped off at the Borough Administration Office at 15 North 12th Street. We're looking for someone on the Assembly that's interested in being appointed to the Historic Preservation Commission. This will last, it'll be a 3-year term that will expire of 12/31/19, so if anybody decides to want to fill that position, just let me know, or let the clerk know. In addition, the commission still has a vacancy on the Planning Commission. It's the representative seat. Letters of interest may be submitted to the Borough Clerk as outlined earlier in this report. Next item on my mayor's report is Borough land selection. Liz Cabrera and I, the Community Development Director, we traveled to Juneau last week, and we're going to testify in the hearing, but it was kind of opposed, this Senate Bill 28 by, well, not really opposed, but by Senator McMenamin. She wanted to have DNR explain why there wasn't a monetary value put on the land, and their answer was that there hadn't been one before for the other 15 boroughs, but that didn't satisfy her question. So our lobbyist is working on it, and maybe we'll have better explanation tomorrow when we have the House bill. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully she'll change her mind, but the Senate Community Regional Affairs Committee will meet again on this issue. So maybe at that point Senator Stedman will be there. He wasn't on that day because he had another bill that was being introduced at the same time. So our lobbyist is kind of optimistic that it'll pass. It might not, or get, through the legislature. It might not be this year, but maybe next. So we'll see how it goes at the House bill hearing tomorrow morning. I'm glad Liz is up there, and I'm going to call in and give a brief little voice of support as well. Arctic Frontiers Conference. I went to Norway last month. That trip, I was invited by the Norwegian Embassy. That was very, very interesting, probably above my pay grade a little bit. There was 2,000 people that attended this year, 1,300 last year. It's the 11th year of that conference, but very interesting. There was ministers from all over the world, from countries that aren't even, in the Arctic, like Singapore and China, Japan, everybody, because they could be involved in shipping them when it opens up in the Arctic. But it was really interesting. I have to add one little note here. This Stephen Sackler from BBC World News Hard Talk was the moderator, and that was very interesting. He could really engage people. I've seen him on TV, but to see him in person was pretty interesting. They were kind of hard on our newly elected president, him and Jeffrey Sachs, but it just said he was an easy target, and he is putting himself out in the media. So that was interesting. People, a lot of people that I talked to were kind of concerned with what's going on. They said, well, let's just see what happens. But I did meet with the mayor of Kirkness and the mayor of Tromsø and invited them to Petersburg, as many other people. So they would like to come to Petersburg or Alaska at some point. It's on their bucket list. In fact, the mayor of Tromsø will be in Fairbanks earlier this summer, and she might try to make her trip route back through Petersburg. So that would be nice. We'll have to give her a warm welcome if she shows up. That's about one other thing I want to add, I guess. I'm done with talking about the Arctic Frontiers Conference, but the Chamber Dinner, the end of the month, I believe it's on the 25th. We'll have people visiting from out of town. It'll be Senator Sullivan, Stedman, and Representative Christ Tompkins, as well as someone from possibly the Cook family that just purchased Icicle. If not, it'll be Icicle's new CEO. So that dinner's on the 25th of the month, and trying to arrange a timing for, with Sullivan's office, what he's going to do when he's in town. He's in town for a brief period of time, but he wants to meet with Steve and myself, and if we could get maybe one or two other assembly members to meet, so we don't have a quorum, that would be easier. But if everybody wants to be there, then we'll have to advertise a meeting, and then I imagine the public would be invited as well. So anyway, he just wants to tour the building and maybe go down to the Icicle plant, and then he'll be at the dinner. That's all I know about his visit so far. And that's it for the mayor's report. Steve, I guess that's the manager's report.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to PIA, who have recently agreed to help perform snow removal from our fire hydrants. It's greatly appreciated and takes some load off of our public works staff. As you may imagine, Public Works has been dealing with a lot of frozen water lines, broken water meters, and frozen culverts. We'll continue that as the weather stays cold and when it warms up, it's much easier. Continuing to remind folks on the private side of things, check their water lines and, heat tape, insulation, whatever they need to do. Congratulations to Sam Jackson and Martin Odegaard. Sam passed his CDL testing, and Martin upgraded to a Class A CDL last week. Borough had to agree to pay all the expenses to bring a CDL road examiner to town, as the state's budget cuts have resulted in a freeze of DMV travel to rural communities. We threw this out to the whole community, and 2 Borough employees were tested, and 2 other locals were also allowed to take the test. Unfortunately, it looks like that's going to be the way things happen in the future if we want them to come to town. Sanitation staff has been working on getting all of our waste oil burners up and running. The bigger unit had some issues with the heat exchanger being corroded, and it was patched successfully and is now working. The burners are the borough's method of disposing of the used oil from the harbor, so it's important that they spend the winter getting all of the stuff burned up so we have enough storage when we hit the season. Harbor collects roughly 12,000 gallons of used oil a year, which we burn at the baler. Surplus equipment auction was successful in selling 3 vehicles and various other pieces of equipment. Another auction will take place this spring, and some of the more specialized equipment, like the bucket truck and the sweeper, will be put into online government auctions to reach the larger bidding audience. We had Motorola here on site from the 30th of January until February 2nd to train dispatchers on the new radio system. The new fire EMS frequency has been installed, and preliminary results show dramatically increased range and local coverage. So, good work on that. Joe Bertignoli will be taking Marty's place to cover the municipal building renovation inspection duties during a pre-planned vacation that Marty's on. Currently, Joe will be conducting the walkthroughs and creating punch lists with the inspector, particularly on the finish work and some of the ADA requirements. At this point, it's more hands-on with the contractor as we try to get some of the things finished and get us to a point where we can start setting dates to move people in. The mayor talked about the ongoing effort to increase the borough's municipal land entitlement. Basically, we have a bill in the Senate and one now in the House, and we'll see how they go forward. Joint meeting with the Harbor Board to review alternatives for development of the Scow Bay area was well attended, resulted in a good conversation about planning for future needs and expansion at that site. The next public meeting will likely include a preferred alternative, and we do not have a date on that at this point. Correct. Property assessment notice will be mailed out on March 1st. Land values within the town have been revalued, and if you live within the original Petersburg town site, it is very likely that your land value has changed. Some went up, some went down. This is the area between downtown, North Nordic, Sandy Beach, and Haugen Drive. We're encouraging people to make sure you open your mail and look at those. The only chance that people have to appeal this value is the month of March. Appeal forms can be found on the borough's website and on the finance department page. Next year, the remainder of Service Area 1 will be revalued. So, again, encouraging people to not just ignore it, open it up, look at it if you have issues, come in and talk and get the appeal forms if needed. We will be having a sales tax audit on April 3rd. BDO, the borough's auditors, will be doing the audit. 16 businesses have been selected to participate, and they will be notified in the next several weeks. This is something we do ever so often, and make sure that we're following all the rules and businesses are collecting the sales tax in a way that is according to our ordinances. The final stages of the foreclosure process for the 2014 taxes is in process. 5 parcels remain unpaid. They have until February 27th to redeem those by paying the 2014 taxes and fees. Proposed budgets are due from department heads and community organizations by February 15th, and they'll get them to Jody. We are working on a schedule for Firefighter 1 course. We want to make sure we've got enough people to complete the course and get some new volunteers. If we don't have enough volunteer or enough folks interested in the class, then it's hard to put the class on. In that vein, a committee in the fire department has been formed to try to come up with new ideas to recruit volunteers and retain current volunteers. Our number of people available to respond at this point is fairly low. Harbor maintenance has been concentrating on upgrades on the South Harbor potable water system. Age-related wear and tear has resulted in some pedestal connections failing, and some of the heat trace is getting a bit old, and we're replacing that to make sure the pedestals don't freeze up during cold weather. Reminders were sent out early this month to users for their renewal of the drive-down facility permits, so folks who want to use that, please get with the harbor. The harbor staff is working on the 2017 tour ship schedule. It looks like the number of stops are slightly up compared to the last few years. They're working with one company to use the face of the drive-down float for approximately 12 stops on a trial basis. They have agreed to work the harbor and come in on days the fishing fleet should be out. So hopefully they work well with the harbor and we can make that work. Run for Chocolate is 9 a.m. on February 11th. No pre-registration is required. Show up Saturday morning at the community center with your favorite chocolate dessert. First person to finish gets first pick of the proceeds. So those of you who like chocolate and like to run, two matched up in one event. The next lifeguard class will be February 17th through the 19th. Encourage folks that are interested to be there, and Chandra will show you how to be a lifeguard. Library has launched an online fine payment system. Customers can now log into their library account online and pay fines with a credit card. Or you can actually, the month of February, they have a read away your fines program at the library. For every 15 minutes customers read in the library, they can have $1 in fines waived. And last, just a big thank you to the library's group of advisory teams. This is a committee that they do a radio show on KFSK, GOAT radio show every Friday. The show has been running weekly for 5 years and is currently hosted by Noah Sullivan, Melanie Chase, Althea Malone, Liam Demko, Jolise Lopez, Yasmin Eremia, and Avery Sakamoto. And thank these teams for being involved in our community.
All right, thanks, Steve. Is there any questions of the manager, the items on his report? You okay with that, Cindy?
Yes.
Okay. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, and that's unfinished business. And the first item under that is ordinance for second reading, and that's ordinance 2017-01, an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code, Chapter 4.12, local improvements, to update from city code to borough code and to incorporate the provisions of Petersburg Borough Charter Article 16, local improvement, into the borough code. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Greger, seconded by Member Strand to adopt ordinance 2017-01 in its second reading. Any discussion? Wondering if anybody had any, Carl, have you had anybody come and talk to you about wanting to pursue this any farther, neighborhoods, or what's the, I don't know if you'd be the, I haven't had any communications on this personally. Of course, I've been out of town a little bit.
Mr. Mayor, I haven't had anybody specifically talk to me, but I have heard words through folks in my office that there are some residents that are interested in pursuing the paving LID once the code provision is rewritten. Don't know what kind of percentage that is of the overall affected population, but there is some interest.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Since it's going to, the ordinance has to go three readings, are you still going to have sufficient time to get letters out to the people and to make so we have some reasonable choice and then get the work done?
We'll take the best stab at it that we can. It's still unknown to me when Seacon will be moving their plant, the hot mix plant, out of Petersburg, and the best we can do is send letters out once this is all resolved and see what kind of interest there is out there. If there is interest, then I can let CCON know as soon as possible, and they can hopefully work that into their plans for the summer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me. Not for you, Carl, but hang out, I guess. I was talking to some people about, and we discussed the percentage of voter, and ending up at 66% as per the charter needed for approval to move forward. I know a lot of us on the Assembly had concerns for it. I've kind of rethought my position on that. I think 66 is extraordinarily reasonable. A couple examples. When the library went to bond, it passed 52 to 48%. 48% of people said, no, we don't want to pay for a new library. Borough formation, I believe it was 56 to 44%-ish, maybe 54, close. So either way, it leaves either 44 or 46% against. 66 to 34 seems like takes well into account the idea of needing a more significant portion of that for a local paving project. So I want to say that out loud to kind of put some context with it.
Okay, any other comments on this ordinance in its second reading?
Just one real quick comment here. Just because this ordinance is on the books does not obligate anybody to have to go through with it. So there's still always an appeal process. So I think this is just a matter of housekeeping. So I'm just going to keep it moving forward here, and we'll just leave it on the books.
Well said.
Okay, and I didn't vote in favor of this first reading. I still have a little bit of concern with someone in the neighborhood that can't afford it. If the rest of the people in their neighborhood want it and they vote to move ahead with the paving project, that could cost somebody, money they don't have. So I still have a little problem with that. But like Kurt said, we can stop that down the road when the process to form an LID for each individual street comes before us. If I understand it right. So I'll probably vote in favor of it in the second reading, just to move it forward, and hopefully the timing works out. If someone wants their street paved and we have the money, well, it's a lot of ifs still. So anyway, any other discussion? Cindy, do you want to weigh in at all? Or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Have the clerk call the roll.
Jay,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, next item. That's the only item under unfinished business. The next item is under new business, and it's Resolution 2017-02, a resolution supporting Senate Bill 28, municipal land selection for the Petersburg Borough. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
I so moved.
Second.
Moved by Member Lagadakis, seconded by Member Lim, to adopt Resolution 2017-02. This is the one we need. Bob?
Okay, but I have a question, Mr. Mayor. On this, on the whereases, in your discussions up there, would it make any difference if we added, or do we need to add something that would ask the state not to sell or to adjudicate in some way those lands before we have a chance to go through, to go through the legislative process? And that's just a question at this point.
I know we've had this discussion before. There wasn't any discussion that came up, that line of reasoning from either Senator Stedman or Bryce Tompkins' office, or from our lobbyists, matter of fact. But so I don't know.
And now you can say that's just a question on my part, is whether or not we need to add another whereas in here asking them not to either.
Not to dispose of any VUU land within our borough boundary until this
Exactly.
is resolved. I suppose we can always add another whereas.
Yeah.
I don't see where it would hurt anything.
Yeah.
So is
Steve,
that-
do you have any thoughts? Or
I wasn't at the meeting. So I'll defer to the mayor's judgment, but I don't know. I don't know that it would hurt anything. I mean,
as slowly as DNR moves, it probably wouldn't be an issue. And but like I said, I don't think it would hurt to put another whereas in there if that would be, if you want to amend it to do that. And then we need to think about adding support for House Bill 85 as well.
all right, I'll move that we add House Bill 85 to it, and that we add another whereas that would ask the state that, would ask that no sale or, I'm not quite sure how to word that, but no sale or removal of those lands, the VUU lands into Petersburg Borough until such time as our legislation is resolved to that effect.
Okay, then that motion's been made by Member Lynn to add House Bill 85 to this resolution and add a whereas asking the state not to dispose of any land in the VUU state land within our borough until our request has been processed.
And I'll second that.
I think the motion was made by Bob,
Was that-
seconded
was
by...
that motion?
by-
What he made?
No, I made a
Yeah,
motion.
by Member Greger. So
Oh,
we've
did you
got,
second?
this is discussion.
Okay.
You have, okay, so
I thought we were doing it.
any other discussion on the amendments to this resolution? Okay, we'll vote on the amendments. Clerk, could you call the roll?
Kurt,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Okay, the amendments have passed unanimously to add the House, request of support, or support House Bill 85, and to add that whereas, so vote for the resolution as amended.
Mark, I was wondering, the people listening at home, if you could speak to House Bill 85 in case they don't know?
What it is?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as the Senate Bill 28. It's just asking the state to give us another 12,770 acres of VUU state land within our borough. That's, I believe that's vacant, unrestricted, unreserved land. Doesn't tap into mental health, state mental health, or forest land, or university land. So it's just, this House bill is the same as the Senate bill, kind of a mirror image, partner bill or whatever. And whichever passes first and will be the vehicle to carry it through the legislature. So with that being said, is there any other discussion? Okay, clerk, call the roll on the resolution as amended.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes. Okay, Resolution 2017-02 passes unanimously, and we will see how the House hearing goes tomorrow morning. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2017-03. This is a resolution supporting appropriation of disaster relief funding by the U.S. Congress for the 2016 Alaska pink salmon commercial fishery failure in the Gulf of Alaska. This includes Prince William Sound, the Kodiak Management Area, the Chicknick Management Area, the Lower Cook Inlet Management Area, the Yakutat Area, South Alaska Peninsula, and Southeastern Area. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Member Walhooter, seconded by Member Lynn. Any discussion on this? I've never been through this, but there's been a little conversation at the Harbor Master Shack where you could learn just about everything in town. But one of the fishermen said they've been through this process before and received some money. I don't know how you decide or who decides who gets the money, but I'm in support of this. I know it just needs congressional support to fund it. So that's my 2 cents anyway. Any other discussion? Okay, clerk, call the roll.
Jay,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Okay, Resolution 2017-03 passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda under new business is 17-037. And this is a request for authorization to put out an RFP for RFP to remodel the Petersburg Municipal Power and Light Building. Entertain a motion to approve this authorization.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Member Greger, seconded by Member Walhooter to approve this authorization, and I'll read through it so people listening know know what we're talking about. In May of 2015, the Assembly was provided with 3 remodel design options for the Petersburg Municipal Power and Light Building and unanimously approved the design provided in the attachments. This design will improve the safety of pedestrians and vehicles at the Nordic and Hogganid Drive intersection with a new angled wall at the entry of the building, as well as bring the building into code compliance, improve energy efficiency, and meet ADA requirements. Petersburg Municipal Power and Light Superintendent Joe Nelson is requesting authorization to go out to bid with the project, which is estimated to cost $539,927. And I believe the funding for this would come out of the Power and Light Enterprise Fund reserves. So, any other discussion? Or call the one, Bob?
Just a question. Was this the design that we had approved at the meeting a year ago, the same? Because we were concerned at the time about being able to look south on that corner. And I thought that was open.
Joe, are you still here? Can you speak to that, Joe? I'm trying to get the attachment up. Isn't that the one with the glass?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
you
it has
can
a
see
glass.
through the corner of the building?
Yeah.
Right. Of the 3 options that we presented to you, this option provides the best vision south. There were one, I can't remember the first one, but the second one was just a kind of a glassed-in corner. But this one actually 45s the lower story of the building. So you're not worried about fog glass or frosted up glass or anything like that. You're going to have a visual.
So that entryway, the door there is actually diagonal to the intersection?
That's right. We've actually cut back into the building at a 45. It's hard. We're looking at a drawing, artist rendition of the building. It's hard to see in this picture, but that corner is 45. It looks like it's facing out, but it's actually 45. And then that 45 section is all glass, as you see there.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Joe while he's up at the podium?
Maybe, Joe, just for folks listening home, I will assume that you've planned and budgeted for this project?
It's approved budget item, yes.
Thanks.
I should say that we're a couple of dollars short if the actual bid actually comes in close to the estimate. We might be a few dollars short, but I think we budgeted $520, and the bid now, or the estimate now is $530.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll see. So you'll issue the RFP if it's approved soon, and we will have to have some bids back in a month or so?
I would hope
What
so.
is the bid time?
Carl, help me.
All right, great.
One other quick question here, just to refresh our memories. This is a long time ago, and I remember this thing. I don't believe this was the most expensive option that we had. I think this was kind of more the middle of the road, I think. So, I mean, refresh my memory for that. Was it?
I actually think it was the most expensive option.
Was the most, but I think it was the most effective, I think, because I remember we hashed this over quite a bit, so this was well thought out, I think, so, even though I can't remember it.
It's been shelved for a while, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, thanks, Joe. If there's no other questions. Okay, any other discussion on this authorization? This requesting to send it out to an RFP? Okay, seeing none, clerk call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy? Yes.
Okay, we'll see what the bids come back like. It's been unanimously voted for to send out this RFP for the Power and Light Building remodel. Next item under new business is D 17-041, and this is fiscal year 2018 capital projects list. I'd entertain a motion to approve the list as presented.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Walhooter to send this capital projects list to to the state and have it entered in their CAPSIS program. Just last week when Liz and I were in Juneau, we had the opportunity to meet with the governor. Had 15 minutes with him or so, and as we were talking mostly about Senate Bill 28 and a few other issues, but he asked if we had any capital projects list, and I said it's on the agenda today to discuss. So I don't know if that's encouraging, or it is encouraging to me that he asked, so we'll decide if this list is what we want to send or not. So any discussion on this?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I just have one question. Is it, we have up on the top there, the Petersburg School District Food Services Preparation Renovation. And talking with Steve, it comes out of a different pot than what we have, and I'm not, the more I know, the less I know. But the question is I like showing it on ours, but is there a way that we can more effectively help in securing those funds, I guess, and I'd have to ask Erica, I guess, that question, than what we're doing?
And I believe we have the finance director from the school system here as well, if you could clarify, answer his question. So your question is if there would be better if we supported them asking, or?
Yeah, if there's some way, are we doing it the best way we can to help support their needs, or is there a way we should be doing it differently, that would help?
While they're thinking, I can maybe jump in to add some clarity, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, sure.
CAPSIS is basically the legislative capital project list that all communities in Alaska have the opportunity to put projects in, and then when there's money available, it sometimes can be funded. The schools have their own, it's basically called a deferred maintenance program, and it's funded also through the legislature, but tended to be kind of a big dollar amount, and based on where their projects score, they get funded or not. CAPSIS is generally, maybe it doesn't hurt to have it on there, but it generally, school projects have not been funded out of the CAPSIS part. They've been funded out of the deferred maintenance, the school's deferred maintenance program. So it's kind of a, I'm not sure it hurts having it in CAPSIS, but there's another step that usually is helpful when you're dealing with school projects, which is making sure our delegation, as well as the Senate and House Finance Group, know of the project, so that when money is put in that deferred maintenance program, and I think the school does all this through School Board Association and activities that they take, to make sure that enough money is put into that pot, into the deferred maintenance program, that would hope to get us down to where the Petersburg project is. I don't know where this project scores at this point. The school would have to answer that if they know. But it doesn't hurt to have it in CAPSIS. On the other hand, if it gets funded, it's probably not going to be funded through CAPSIS. It'll be funded through that deferred maintenance. So that's the...
Does that clarify?
About as confusing as I can make it, I guess.
It helps, yeah.
Well, it probably doesn't hurt that whoever funds it to know that the Assembly supports it. That would be my thought on that. So does this list look acceptable to people? The first on the list is the school district's food service preparation and renovation project. Second is Scow Bay haul out and wash down pad. I know you guys can read this. This is just for the listening audience. Hospital renovation, City Creek Dam renovation, renovation of the power and light building, Clausen Memorial Museum design plans and drawings, aquatic center lighting, and recycle equipment, which is glass crusher and tire cutter. So all those together total $39,272,000, with $33 million of that being the hospital renovation. So any other thoughts, or should we send this? And then Steve had another continuing list of just all of our projects, and it doesn't hurt to send them all in case there's a pot of money that comes up for one certain criteria project, and which I'm not expecting to see, but you never know. We might be pleasantly surprised.
And I might also add that in the past, it's never been in any particular order. It's just whatever funds are available at the time, they just get put into different slots. So I mean, we could rate them, but it doesn't really do any good. So anyway,
Well,
just so the listening public doesn't think that we're not concerned about their projects. It's just the way that the system works.
So, and I don't know if these are, like Kurt said, that I don't know if we did this last year. Did we have we realized that the state's fiscal crisis was in such a position where we didn't do the book and every
Correct.
project with full description. So if some funding becomes available, I'm sure our lobbyists will be in touch with us, letting us know.
Yeah.
So,
We're taking a much softer, basically, projects will be entered into CAPSIS if that's what the Assembly wants. If I'm asked by a legislator or by our lobbyist, I'm going to say our priorities are what's on that sheet that the mayor read.
I believe it is kind of a
I mean,
priority list.
But
Yeah.
Kurt is also correct that occasionally they'll come up with a little pot of money, they'll look at the list and go, well, that fits that project, and here, it's all we can do. So it happens both ways, but I like to have a short list, priority list that I can speak to if I'm asked.
Right. So, okay, is everybody on board with this? We'll get it entered in CAPSIS. So all those, I guess we'll call the roll on this one. Debbie, please.
Bob,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Art,
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Okay, now we have some items that we put it under communications, and we've had just to start the dialogue and see where it goes from here. But we've had two letters, one from the Petersburg School District, another one from the Petersburg Medical Center, and they're requesting the borough consider creating a municipal power rate for their facilities. Suggestion buildings that could qualify if a municipal power rate was approved by the Assembly are borough-owned, non-enterprise, large commercial rated buildings such as elementary, middle, high school gym, aquatic center, medical center, fire station, library, public works office and motor pool, municipal building, police, jail, not currently large commercial, but maybe once. If the remodel is completed, and possible recommendation, request Petersburg Municipal Power and Light draft an ordinance to revise the municipal electric code to include a municipal power rate for borough-owned, non-enterprise, large commercial rated buildings. So this is a discussion item today. Any thoughts on this?
You going to speak, Bob?
Bob?
Well, Nancy's got a question.
Nancy?
My constituency that was in contact with me doesn't understand why everybody's rate can't go down. I just heard that comment, so.
Okay, and I think that might be the feel of some of the residents of another city that shares our power system through SEPA is Ketchikan. So I'll get into that a little bit more, but Bob, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to hear Joe's thoughts about the rates and the differences and what effects, pros and cons and so forth, that this might have.
Joe, would you please answer that?
I think that kind of got to go back a little bit in order to put this in perspective. The reason, of course, that we're considering something like this is because the Power and Light Enterprise Fund is healthy. It's got a large reserve, and since the community is now decided not to move our facilities out the road any more than we already have, then the reason for that large reserve, kind of goes away. And so then what do you do with the money? We go through an annual review of our rates during the budgeting process and take a look at our rates. We're supposed to be a nonprofit. And so if we've got more money than what we need, then we're supposed to lower rates or somehow get the money back. This kind of all started about 1985 when we went on Tyee and were able to replace our diesel plant power that ran all the time at that time with the Tyee hydropower. So since then, we've been on the Tyee hydropower plus our own little plant. At the time that happened, the rates were dropped significantly, but not as much as they could have been if you got right down to the bare bones. The idea being that at that time, the community wanted to move that industrial plant out of the downtown area, get it moved out the road. And so they left the rates a little higher in order to purposely build that reserve. So again, that started back in about 1985. When I came here in 2003, the reserve had built over that period of time to around $4 million, $3.8, $4 million, something like that. And my instructions from the city government at that time was to get the plant moved. The project had kind of stalled. They had already purchased the property out Scow Bay. They had already prepped the property as far as leveling it on 2 different levels. But the project had kind of stalled. And so my number one priority, and also the number one priority on your capital project list at that time, was moving the plant. And so we went ahead and started into the design. When we got to the 30% design stage, the first estimate came in, and the estimate kind of blew everybody out of the water. It was something north of $20 million in order to do this. What that included was moving the entire generation plant out the road and adding 20% generation capacity because we were a generation short. So that kind of stopped the project in its tracks right there, and we went back and we re-engineered it and pruned it down every way we could think of, but we still came out at about 16 million. So again, it was kind of stopped in its tracks. So the next approach we took was to, okay, that's a big chunk of money. There was nothing forthcoming from the state or anybody else. The Power and Light had no debt. We had low rates. We had access to hydropower, so nobody at the state was going to lend us or give us any grant money. They thought we were too rich. So we decided to phase it. Still at the time, the project was on the priority list to get funding. It was still a community priority to get it accomplished. And so we began to phase the project, and we moved the 14th Avenue pole and storage yard. We got that moved out there. We put up a metal building to house the line truck and the bucket truck, the big trucks that we have about $500,000 invested in that previously had been just parked outside. Then we had opportunity to deal with our generation, lack of generation, and we were able to put in a new generator out there, our new 2.5 meg generator, which has been in service for a couple of years now. So when I came here, the community had invested about $1 million, almost $1 million in this move by purchasing the land and developing the land. So since then, new generators, about a $2 million project. So we're just slowly but surely getting things out. The next logical step, of course, was to move our headquarters building out there and vacate that corner. That became the emphasis or the priority at that time. So we went ahead then with just moving the headquarters building, moving all the personnel out to Scow Bay. We looked at 3 different things. We looked at a metal building on that lower site. We looked at a frame building at that lower site, and then we looked at purchasing the Reed Brothers shop, which it just so happens that the way that shop is built and laid out and everything, it fits our business quite nicely. So we brought that in front of the council at that time, and a new building, whether it's a stick building or whether it's a metal building, was going to be in the neighborhood of $4 million. That's about what it would cost. And so when we found out that the Reed Brothers shop might be available for significantly less money, we changed directions and went after that. And we actually, I don't remember what year that was, but it was when Scott Hahn was here as the city manager. It was actually an approved budget item. We had a $2 million in the budget item to go negotiate with Reed's on that property. And so we started down that road in the fall of that year. And then it was determined by the city manager that we really couldn't do that we needed to put it to the vote of the people. The reason given was that we were going to obligate the folks for $2 million, even though we had, at that time, probably more like $6 million in the bank. So at any rate, the project got stopped to go to a vote the following fall, basically a year hence. And during that time, then the community kind of lost interest in it. And so we had gone from 24 million down to 16 million, down to 4 million, down to 2 million for the shop building, and then the interest kind of wavered and we didn't move forward with that. So we are down now to the present project that you just approved for $500,000 and stay at that location. So I just want to give some background on why there's that big chunk of money there. I think, Jody, it's about $7.5 million now in our reserve. And bear in mind that our basement or our bottom in there is $3 million. That represents 6 months of operations and some other things that are uninsured. So that's kind of where we're at. So the thing is, what do we do with between 3 million and 7.5? What do we do with that? Bear in mind that that came from ratepayers across the board, not just municipal, but it came from ratepayers across the board. I don't know that somebody like PFI, for instance, who has contributed significantly to that, would be happy with giving it back through a municipal rate. I don't have strong feelings about the municipal rate. I understand where you're coming from. And so that's, did I completely miss your question? No.
Jay?
Taking this at its current form, how would that impact your ability to continue to raise revenue for the enterprise fund? Or would that diminish your, would it put you in the red or keep you in the black?
When you rob Peter, you have to pay Paul.
I understand. But it didn't answer my question.
It's just loss of revenue, and then we're going to have to go back and revisit our rates, yes. But the portion of that built the reserve, of course, we can take out. So where that fits, I'm not quite sure. But just as a matter of point of reference, what's being suggested, and I'm not suggesting this, but what's being suggested is 6.9 cents for this special rate. We already have a rate on the books, our lowest rate. We already have a rate on the books for economic development. That's for new folks that want to bring a business to town, and we want to give them a special rate to get them on their feet. And so that is a 8-cent rate, and we allow that with assembly approval for up to 3 years. So any new business or any expanded business that raises their load significantly can qualify for that rate, and then the assembly can approve it. And so to me, when we did that 8-cent rate was essentially a pass-through. In other words, we buy it, and then we have to add our fixed costs to it, and then that's about a pass-through. Excuse me. So a 6.9 cent rate is definitely a negative rate. We're paying 6.8 cent for it.
I thought that's right around the wholesale price that we paid SEPA for our power. So
essentially then, what you're saying, that 8 cents is just about is a break even for us, or 8 point.
That's correct. There was no harm, no foul at 8 cents. I mean, we're not getting any revenue, but on the other hand, we're not losing any either. At that time, when that was put into effect, which is about 3 years ago, as I recall.
Yeah. Go back a little, or looking a little fit in the future, how about, are the rates going to go up that we're paying SEPA for more work at SEPA, or we're?
Well, Joe could probably answer that better than me. He's been on the SEPA board forever. I've been on there a year, but there's discussion of one municipality wanting to lower it. And I wouldn't be in favor of that because the SEPA organization has huge infrastructure, big cost, and a lot of it's self-insured. If I'm not mistaken, the submarine cables are like, Joe, what are they, $24 million, or is it 40? Submarine cables?
No, it's more like 20 in that area.
Neighborhood. So, I mean, and they're 50% of their life expectancy, maybe, for some of them, if my memory's right. So, I don't know if SEPA's going to lower their rate, but if they do, that's going to definitely affect our thought process on this. And if you think over the last few years, not know how many in a row, Jody could probably answer this, or Joe, but we've been receiving a rebate from SEPA, and up to around $250,000. So that would basically be equal to, what the article in the paper was, if those numbers are right. Jody, did you come up with those numbers? I was going to ask you that before the meeting, if those numbers were correct. The difference from last year to what the former year, based on the prior year, I guess, to if they got the rebate, that's 6.9 cents, it'd be a cost of $223,000 roughly to the borough, to the Power and Light, Municipal Power and Light Fund. So this is maybe why we're having a discussion here before we start taking any action, just to see where we want to go, because there's, in my mind, some moving targets here. It's the wholesale rate we pay to SEPA, what they're going to want to do, and the 8 cents is what it costs the Power and Light at the minimum to take the wholesale power and get it out the door. So,
just a quick question here, just a math question. Joe, has anybody done the math here on how long it would take to drain down that $3 million above and beyond the cap that you guys want to keep in there if we reduce some of these medicinal rates to these non-enterprise and large commercial rating buildings? How long would it take us to drain that down?
The numbers that we ran on the 6.9 cent rate, is that what you're talking about? Mm-hmm. If we go to that?
Yes.
It will cost Power and Light annually about $340,000 annually.
Roughly 10 years, well, roughly 8 years.
Figure that out.
Yeah.
And I wanted to comment on the rebate too. SEPA has been, over the last 5 to 7 years, we've had a rebate almost every year. And what that does effectively is lower the cost of wholesale power. And so even though we pay 6.9 cents, because of the rebate, our effective power cost is only about 6.2. And so it's a huge gold mine for us and the other communities, to have access to old hydro. But at any rate, that's hopefully that answers your
follow-up here. So has each entity that is considering this presented you with this with some numbers on what percentage of reduction in electrical costs it would be per year for each entity? Like would the hospital save 10%, would the school save 5%? Has anybody thrown those numbers at us?
No, not yet.
Some of it might be in the letter from the school board, from the school.
I looked at that one and I didn't see any specific numbers, so.
Are you talking about, I don't have any percentages. I can tell you what the cost savings would be for the hospital.
Okay. Yeah, and they could figure that into their budget that way, I suppose, too. So that
basically $58,667.
And what are they currently using now, or paying now?
They're, on a monthly basis, their average monthly bill right now is $14,000. Under the new rate, it would go down to about $10,000 or $9,000. So we would have a monthly loss in revenue of $4,888. That's
And
power
for
and
the-
lights lost,
That's for the school itself, Joe?
just for the school. No, excuse me, did I say school, hospital? We're talking about the hospital.
He said hospital, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason that the hospital bill, bear in mind, the reason their bill is so high is because they're electrically heated. I'll bet they're the only electrically heated hospital in the state. But they have a 450 kW boiler, electric boiler, that they heat with. So it's significant.
I gotta ask the same, what's your forecast on the rebate in the future? And is SEPA going to need to raise their rates in order to put money aside for future projects? Do you think?
That's a discussion, like Mark was saying, that's a discussion we've been having at the board level, is do we continue to keep the rates where they're at, or do we begin to raise them for a future project? Because the next project, let's say that next project is a third turbine at Tyee, you're talking about significant dollars there, and it would likely have an impact on the rates. I think that impact would be fairly minor. I think we've been talking about, I don't know, correct me, Mark, if I'm wrong here, but it seems to me like that third turbine they're looking at roughly 30 million to do that.
I think that's the number that's been kicked around.
And we did the Swan Raise project, which was basically a $14 million project to begin with. And we did that without raising rates.
Some of that was grant funded from the state and other things too.
We had a $5 million grant from the state.
And that is in front of the SEPA administration right now to come up with a cost of what it would be to put the third turbine in at Tyee.
And that's going to take years to do that. So I think in the near future, looking forward, the rates are going to be very stable, if not downward, like Mark was talking about.
So, Steve, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just curious. Do we know what SEPA's fund balance is?
I believe cash fund is between 12 and 20? Or is
No,
it closer to,
it's a little bit north of 20.
Yeah, I thought it was
somewhere between 20 and 24 million.
Right.
We're required to, I shouldn't say SEPA's required to keep a certain amount of money on hand to forward fund R&R replacement projects.
They have a current 4R plan, if you haven't seen it, SEPA does, on what their projection is for projects in the future for funding. It's big. And what's the value of that, all that infrastructure, 160 million?
Something like
that neck of the woods. So you've got a big entity there, and we're lucky we benefit from that. So, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, that being on that SEPA board last year was very interesting, and it's going to be more interesting going forward. I think this year the first meeting starts here Wednesday. So Wednesday and Thursday. Ketchikan has the voting, you know, the majority of the votes this year, and who knows what, this could be interesting to see what happens. They have new board members that they haven't had on the board before. Their borough or city manager Carl Amelot is on there, so not that that's going to, could have significant difference. It depends.
Well, and to speak to, I mean, and Joe hit all of the targets right on, but kind of to speak for the group from a standpoint that, you know, the school, the hospital, and the borough have been kind of getting together in these meetings to try to figure out ways that we can continue to function in the way the community wants without having to either cut services or raise property taxes or other things to try to fund what we do. And this was one of the ideas that came out of it. You know, and it fits a little bit with if the assembly wants to spend down the power and light fund balance. This is one of many different ways that it could be done to do that. But Joe's 100% correct. There are costs to that, and how, you know, how many years do you want to do it, and then at a certain point you have to come back and change the rates again to stop that from happening, because we don't want power and light to fall below their fund balance targets. They have expensive infrastructure as well. So, I mean, the topic of a municipal power rate came up in the vein of you've got, you know, the borough losing revenue, and, you know, the choices are going to be cut services or raise taxes. You know, the school has very little opportunity to change the dynamic if the state keeps doing what they're doing on their funding, and the hospital in a similar fashion in the sense of that they know they've got a big remodel project hanging over their heads. So, again, this is one of those things that came out to how can, when you talk about the school, the hospital, and the borough, it impacts pretty much everybody's lives in the community. So how do you try to come up with ideas that will help either fund or do stuff that'll keep fees from having to go up in other places? So, it'll be interesting. I mean, this is,
Well, I kind of look at, Joe, the Power and Light does have a big reserve right now, and he explained why it's there, but that was all ratepayer funded, and so if we did this municipal rate and it cost them $300,000 a year, that's actually pre-funded for now by the ratepayers, but then when you get down to the point where it's a zero balance, then the ratepayers, it's going to be on their shoulders to pay for the municipal rate.
Unless the assembly changed the rate again. I mean,
right.
It's one of those things that...
that's just some of my thoughts, and that's why we need to have this discussion.
I would be in favor of something like this, because we can do it on a 3-year basis, like you say, in the ordinance that we set the rates every 3 years. So, if we have that big of a surplus, there's a lot more details that I got to understand before I'm going to vote yes on this. But I think, in concept, I like the idea.
Sounds like a good idea, but then we need to public input.
Yeah, we'll be in the details. There's
comment?
no question. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Question. Go on.
I'm a little bit of both, I guess. It's kind of a if I had my way kind of thing, which I very rarely get, of course. But I like this idea a lot in principle. And again, if I had my way, I would include just the schools and the hospital and remove the municipal buildings. And here's why. We've talked a lot about changing the financial relationship with the school, given the state and federal challenges for the school. Same thing with the hospital. State, federal challenges, major renovation projects. It struck me as a very linear and direct way to offer them some support. It's not a ton, but in these times, I think even the modest amount that this would afford them would be most helpful. And again, if I had my way, I would remove the municipal buildings and just give them the municipal power rate, those entities. I think it would help. I think it'd be of good use to them without damaging us too much. But again, I'm still learning as I go also.
Okay, so any other, Bob? Is there any other questions of Joe, so we don't keep him standing up there?
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, no.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, my comments is that if we were going to do this, I think Cindy's there, if we were going to do this, I don't see the borough being as part of it, because I think we need to have, the taxpayers need to know what the true cost of doing business is for a government. The school itself and the hospital, I would agree with, but from my perspective, it should be what it costs us to do business. If it's 8 cents a kilowatt, what have you, I think that should be the basis. But then I'd also go back, I'd like to see at a later meeting some options of how we take care of it with the ratepayers, because they're the ones that put it into the fund. What do we do? What are our we talked a little bit, do we do it over time? Do we just give them one rebate? How do you do business? I really do think that fund needs to come down. And I think since the ratepayers paid it, they're the ones that need to benefit, from my perspective.
Cindy, did I hear you have a comment or question?
No, just a couple philosophical comments. One is, you were weighing the remodel project for Power and Light versus this, and that is just an invitation to bid. We still would have to approve the final amount. So even if we went ahead and approved a change to a municipal rate for the hospital and the school, we still could pull the Power and Light project or defer it depending on what that bid is as it comes in. And my other point would be that I feel very strongly that giving a municipal rate to the hospital and to the school is supporting the ratepayers, because it's a quality of issue, a quality of life issue for Petersburg, and it's one of the things that makes our community strong. Actually, two things that make our community strong, and supports a significant number of jobs. So I would be very much in favor of passing it.
Okay, thank you. And I don't consider personally the Power and Light building renovation, even a part of this particular discussion, I consider that, if the bids come in favorable, they've got the money, so, and it was put aside to do that, just do it, and then we're going to have 3 million excess, and then that's where that money comes into this discussion. So I agree with the importance of the hospital and the school in our community. But in my mind, that's why I wanted to have this on the agenda as a discussion item, wait to move forward with power and light remodel, if that comes in favorable, and do that, and then talk about how we're going to move forward with this discussion. Well, that was my position on it, just to get that out there.
One last quick comment is, every place I travel in Southeast Alaska, I always ask what power rates are. And ours are really reasonable. I mean, I just came out of Prescott, Arizona, where it's like 15 cents a kilowatt hour during low periods and 25 cents during peak periods. And what are we, around 11 or something, Joe, that I'm paying in the harbor? I mean, it's just, and we're right in there with Juneau. Juneau's around 10 something. You know, I mean, we're really right on par with everybody else. So, as for reducing rates for the customer, everybody likes to pay less, but shut a light off. You know.
And I did that, sorry, Joe, but are you still here? Can't see behind Carl. One more question, you could just answer it from there. But do you have any major infrastructure projects that you would need that we could use some of that reserves for if we directed it that way? I mean, like new power lines, transformers, I mean.
Our poles.
The poles, whatever, though, because our neighboring community, Wrangell, they've got 50, 60-year-old poles in their system that they're really concerned about. I think we're fortunate that we have, I think, a fairly stable infrastructure here for power and light. Just to get that on the, in people's minds as well, if there is something.
We have an aging infrastructure, and I've had discussions with Steve about a pole replacement project down the line. We try to do a forecast 3 to 5 years, and if I was given the go-ahead to improve the infrastructure, I could easily spend down that reserve in 3 to 5 years. There's some significant things coming up, yes.
Okay, well, I think that's important information to keep in the equation here too, because that's just my thought. All right, is there any other discussion on this? And I see we have members from the school and the hospital here. Since we're clicking right along, it's only 1:15. If either entity would like to come and make a comment, we'll open the microphone to you if you'd like. Hopefully, is that okay with everybody, so we'll get beat up? Is that all right? Seems prudent. Agreed.
Hi, I'm Liz Woodyard from the hospital, and I just want to kind of give a credit to Steve, because he's been getting the hospital and Erica and the school and the borough together, because we are part of this community and we all appreciate what the borough does for us and what the school and what the hospital contribute to the well-being and the quality of life for everybody that lives here. And so we were just kind of thinking of ways to come up with ideas to really be more efficient and to be more effective without raising rates to our patients, our residents, and to support services for the school and for the borough. And coming up with this idea for municipal rate made sense without imposing any fees on anybody else that we would have to ask for any additional money for other things, and it would give us a little bit of a breather and help us with some of our costs for infrastructure and remodeling or being more efficient with the hospital. So I just want to say that appreciate your time listening and considering this idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Is there any questions of Liz? Okay, thank you. And we'll be having this discussion again, I'm sure. Yeah. Right, yeah.
Good afternoon. I would also just tell you that we appreciate you giving some time and some consideration to this topic. We have had some great planning discussions, I think, as a group, trying to move forward and trying to think about some solutions to offer rather than just coming with hands out, that kind of thing. As a district, we have spent a lot of time over the last 3 to 5 years with the renovation at the elementary school and various other projects to try to decrease some of those costs in our district, and we have decreased them over the last 3 years in particular. 64% of our electrical budget does go to the community center, to the gym and the pool. So we have a really very symbiotic relationship with that facility in particular. So anyway, thank you for your time. If you have any questions for me or...
Any questions, Berger?
Okay.
Well, we'll see where the discussion goes from here. Thank you.
Would it be reasonable to ask Joe to, he said that we have an aging infrastructure, to come back with us with some ideas or applying some ideas of what he would do to fix the aging infrastructure with that part of the money and some kind of a plan to it? And
thought kind of crossed my mind, and it seems to me like that would be a benefit to all of the ratepayers. I'm not saying that the discussion we're having here isn't important too, but I think if you look at the whole picture, it might be more important. So, yeah. So, I don't know who to ask this question of, probably the manager. Steve, and Joe, can we work on some kind of a forecasted plan, or what infrastructure would be?
He's writing notes.
I see he's writing already, so he's planning on retiring soon, so we have to get this rolling pretty quick here, huh, Joe? So, anyway, I guess if there's no other discussion items here, or no other discussion on this item, we'll talk about the amended part, the trip to Juneau, the lobby and trip to Juneau. Who should we lobby? Bob, you have some ideas?
well, just a couple of them. We know we're not going to get very much money this year. But my idea was, we went back to, and I'm going to say the name incorrectly, so hang with me, is Luchins on both Kupenoff on the harbors. And we said, no, we wouldn't do it for that amount of money. And they said, well, okay, we're going to pull the money. If it's all right with I would like to see us sit down with him and to see what we could do to get to some kind of an agreement in the future. Steve came back to us and said, hey, there's maybe some federal money out here for projects. Well, and one of the things that I like the idea of putting Papke's on there, but Kupenoff could be too. The point being I'm trying to get at is that to sit down with him and see if there's some way we could help work with him to get to some place where we could, at some future time down the road, take it over. So anyhow, I'd like to see us have a meeting with that individual.
With Mr. Luchon?
Yes. Your thoughts?
The lobbyist and I, we talked about that a little bit when we were in Juneau, and I was kind of the feeling that, well, they were going to come back to us with another offer. And it was, that was just where I thought we were at as an assembly, but we could surely go talk to him. And maybe it would be better to talk with Lucan, I think would be the commissioner of the DOT, not, someone that's farther down the pecking order.
Yeah, I agree.
Mike was good to deal with, Lucan, but, so we could ask Ray to make an appointment. That's a couple weeks off, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
And I imagine we'll meet with our, representatives and senators and.
We should do that, yes.
Yeah, so. Steve, do you have any ideas? Anybody else we could meet with? I know the school board goes up there and does their thing, but if there's anybody we could talk to put another.
I think a lot of what we'll hear from my perspective is going to be budget related, and it'll be what the legislature does in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
Go back to what prompted us to talk about a municipal power rate. What prompted us is secure rural schools going away at a federal level. The legislature is talking about big hits to PERS. They're talking about big hits to things like a radio station, and the list goes on. So, I'm less excited about asking to take on Papke's as I am about, can they please not kill our community jail program even more than they already have. So I don't have a firm list at this point, but it's going to be a conversation with Ray and with Kathy Wasserman at AML to get a feel for what's happening. I mean, what are the we've heard a little bit that they're already going after PERS. And, I'm in a position of, we're just trying to balance the budget at this point, and how much we're going to have to cut to make that happen going into this year's budget process. So, talking to Mr. Lukin at DOT, it doesn't hurt, I don't think, but the land selection is a huge deal. I think we need to, based on what's happening there, that is top of priority on my list at this point, unless something changes. And then what do we deal with from standpoint of Senator Stedman and Representative Christ Tompkins on help on keeping PERS from getting worse through the community jail program or some of the other service money that we're getting. DOT has already said that they want to cut, money that they pay for the airport security office. I shouldn't say, a member of DOT's staff have said that. They cut Joe on our street lights that they pay us for. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of thing. And, that's going to be most of my focus unless the Assembly tells me differently.
A lot of it will probably be playing defense when they come out with their plan, so.
That's kind of what I was figuring, but.
So, the PERS and TERS thing, like you said, that one letter we just got, the email from Kathy Wasserman where they changed one word in the thing from shall to may, and then that just takes their whole responsibility away, what the state has to do, so it's something to really keep on top of. So I guess we could just formulate this plan. Who's all going? I know I am, Bob is, Steve's going to Juneau. Cindy, you're not going to be able to make the trip, or are you going to make this trip or make the Southeast Conference one?
I'm going to make Southeast Conference this time.
In March?
Yes.
Okay. So there'll be three of us there, and I guess we'll just have to go on our lobbyists' recommendations and stuff we hear between now and the 20th when we go. We might have to put faith in us that we'll do the right thing when we're up there, I guess.
Yeah. And I'll talk to Ray. I'll see if he thinks we should meet with, the DOT commissioner.
Right.
And we'll go from there.
We'll see what happens. Okay, so any other discussion items other than borough charter amendments? Okay, we'll move on to that next. So borough staff and the assembly have run into Petersburg Borough Charter provisions that have made business difficult at times and may need to amend. For example, the current charter does not provide for the city of Kupernof to own and operate their own dock facility. Any amendments to the charter must be approved by borough voters. If the assembly would like to put any charter amendments on the October 2017 municipal election ballot, the first reading of any ordinance to do so must occur at the May 15th, 2017 assembly meeting to meet time requirements in Charter Section 18.02. And there's a few possible charter amendments that are attached. Clerk Thompson has not yet made it through the charter, and one of these is the one that John Murga spoke to earlier about the Planning Commission, for instance, making it appointed by the mayor, approved by the Assembly Commission instead of a voted position. So anybody have any thoughts on any of these? These are just what Debbie, I guess, is putting forward as ideas at this point. Is that, yeah. So we may as well start at the top, the initiative and referendum.
Yeah.
Charter Section 6.01.
The initiative and referendum, I'm totally supportive of that in the charter, but there are a couple things that I do think we've run into that need to be corrected. And I think after Debbie's looked at that, and one of them is requiring a special vote on any kind of an initiative or referendum within 90 days. And that's one that I really think that needs to be changed and to make it congruent with our normal elections.
To offset extra costs.
Yes,
with
correct.
Special elections.
Yeah. The last time we looked at that, I believe, and correct me, Debbie, if I'm wrong, it was over $10,000 to run a special election. $10,000. And what this would do, the proposal here would essentially put it back to our regular elections rather than to have a special election.
What it would do is it would remove the language saying that a special election would be forced. It would remove that language, so it would say that a sufficient petition would go on a ballot at the next election occurring more than 90 days from certification. So if we were having a special election for some other reason before we had the regular election, we could put that on the special election ballot as well. Otherwise, it would be held to the next regular election.
Yes. And to me, that makes a lot of sense to make that change. And then there's one other change as part of that was to, the way our charter now reads is that if we have a petition, as soon as we receive that, the issue on the docket at the time is in suspension. And correct me if I'm wrong. And there's a second piece of this language that would not put that in suspension. I was wrestling that a little bit around in my mind and thinking, well, we probably should put it in suspension and we should leave it the way, but there's an alternative argument that which makes more sense, and I'll let Debbie talk to that one because we wrestled that around a little bit.
Well, and I'm not sure that my example is something that would actually happen, but what I was trying to think of why we wouldn't want it to be suspended immediately just because someone has filed. And so we're not saying that it's been certified as sufficient at this point. But if there was some legislation that we just put in, and so, okay, so what I was thinking is, what if someone decided that they didn't want the borough to pick up garbage in town anymore. They wanted it to be a private enterprise, and so they put in a petition saying, you know, this is what we think, and so now we can't pick up the garbage. We have to suspend our garbage service. And so it makes more sense to me to wait for that suspension until the petition is actually certified by the clerk, rather than just doing it immediately. It'll still happen if it's certified, but it would have to be certified for it to happen if we change the language.
And those were the two, under this particular item. It would still leave the whole process in place. It just changes those two particular items, which
Correct.
make a lot of sense. And I would support those changes.
So are we starting to, and I believe this is the start of the process, is compiling a list of charter changes that we want for the 2017?
We are. And so any department heads or whoever that have things that they saw that they thought might need to be changed, they're getting that information to me. We're trying to just write something up just for you guys to look at, and then you can direct us as to what changes you want to be put in ordinance form so we can get that started in order to get anything on the ballot.
Right.
And then
So
once,
we have to,
once it's in ordinance form, we go through the same 3 readings that you can make tweaks to the language.
so it sounds like this could even get to the point where it might be a meeting of its own. I mean,
Yeah.
a special meeting to address these charter changes or proposed ones. I mean, there's a few here already. So is that, everybody okay with the way this first one has been proposed, to have it selected as one of the ones that would be on the ballot or for an ordinance? I mean, then we, like they said, we could discuss it again.
So this item, 6.01, if you don't mind, the 6.01A one is actually something we can do by ordinance just to change the code, 2.44. So that's something that doesn't need to go on a ballot. And if you guys agree with that, as Bob explained, then you could ask me to just draft an ordinance for its first reading at the next meeting to remove that special election language. So that wouldn't have to be a charter amendment. The second one, 601B3, that is a charter amendment.
601B3.
Wait,
Okay.
maybe it's not.
Right.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not, I'm wrong. It's all code. It's just code. So this one isn't, the reason I put it in the charter amendment, because she had some notes of things that we could do in the charter if we wanted to, but she thought it made more sense to just change the code, and I agree with that.
Okay, for this first one, the 6.01.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeesh, sorry.
That's okay. So this next one that we're talking about is the Planning Commission and that's 7.01, and that would be where currently it says there shall be a planning commission consisting of 7 members who shall be elected at large. They're talking about striking the elected at large and appointed by the mayor with majority vote of the assembly, and I believe this was initiated by our community development director, Liz, because of a letter that came from, that she...
It's actually a combination of things, but yes, sir.
Okay, but I was just going to, I remember when we formed the borough and decided which commissions and committees to make appointed or voting, this was one of the ones that discussion was where it would be voted. And then we did away with the Parks and Rec Board at that time and on and on. But that doesn't mean we can't change that. So anyways.
Yeah, she got a letter. We have found that traditionally a lot of P&Z boards are appointed versus elected. You know, it was at the planning conference that she went to. Prior to that, we had discussed before internally about 7 members versus 5, and primarily because we were having such a hard time getting a full P&Z board, trying to debate whether, do we want to suggest changing the charter to go to 5 members so it's easier to get a full member board. They seem to be having less of a problem with that recently in getting the board filled. But traditionally in P&Z, at least in the last 4 or 5 years, no one runs, and the assembly's appointing them basically regardless. So I can't give you the numbers, but I think very few of the current members were actually voted on, were they?
I can't tell you.
So anyway, that's where that's coming from. No, it's not making a huge issue, but we just wanted to recognize it.
Sitting in my position, I don't want to be the one that, well, in our positions, I guess, to appoint somebody, and not that it would happen in Petersburg, but someone says, okay, you appointed someone because your brother wants to build this, and he knows, you'll get a favorite vote. So I'm in favor of keeping it like it is as an elected body. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know if I explained that very well, but Nancy, you had your hand up?
Well, if we wanted to appoint everyone for the membership, we just have to wait till they don't show up to be voted on. So we should continue with them being elected and fill in. Now,
Kurt?
The only reason I could see this would work is if it was a cost savings at the election poll. Because right now, people are sending in letters of interest and then we're appointing them when they want to do it. So, and so if it's not going to be a cost savings, if it's going to, create more transparency on what Mark had just mentioned about, not nepotism and things like that, then, and if it's not going to save them any paperwork, it just kind of seems like a moot point. I think we should leave it as is.
Okay, we'll drop that one.
Okay. Okay, Jay?
Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't one part of that, I remember reading through that letter that Liz had sent, wasn't one argument about appointing versus electing is to remove them from political pressures because they don't have to feel beholden?
Yes, I just don't know that there's much political pressure here.
Agreed.
For that. Traditionally when you see big cities, P&Z and variance committees tend to be a highly volatile type thing, and removing them from the political process has some value. This was one that, we wanted to hear what the assembly had to say. I don't know that it matters much. As Nancy said, you guys are appointing them pretty much across the board anyway. But
I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. It is a decision-making commission, if I'm not mistaken, so. Anyway, what is next?
Thomas Bay Power.
Yeah. Thomas Bay Power Authority. And what was and I think all of the assets have been turned over to SEPA, any that they are, and I think the discussion when we dissolved Thomas Bay Power Authority and let SEPA take over as the O&M for the Tyee line, the discussion came up whether we should leave Thomas Bay Power Authority even in existence. And I think it was between the Wrangell folks and the Petersburg folks, it was discussed, well, what's it hurting to have it on the books in case you ever do want Thomas Bay Power Authority to do what they were formed for, seeking out another hydro project. And I think that's where Thomas Bay Power Authority originally was formed.
And the question is, does the Assembly want it removed from the charter? You can always put it in, like many of our other boards are, and create it through ordinance or resolution. But having it in the charter, this goes back a while. I think it was Jim Brennan who said the cleanest would be to remove it from the charter since it is non-existent at this time.
And Wrangell has removed it from their charter.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
And,
okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
Okay,
and-
so our discussion at the Thomas Bay Power Authority Commission didn't matter, or it
Right.
did matter, but at the,
Yes, and I just think it needs to be removed. It doesn't do away with what you're, with what you're suggesting. but
it could be
still-
put in by resolution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, but it's not there now, and the way it's worded in our charter, it's kind of moot right now. It really does need to be removed, in my opinion.
Okay, well, knowing that Wrangell has removed theirs, it kind of doesn't make any sense for us to have ours. Sales, what's that?
Cindy.
I'm not entirely clear how we left the planning commission discussion. If we're going to bring it up again, I can make my comments at another time.
Actually, I think the ones here in the room, but the sense I got was to keep it an elected position. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are not to keep it as an elected position. I was the planning commissioner for Lincoln County, Oregon as my very first government position 30-some years ago, and it was not elected. It's not a precedent-setting thing by any stretch of the imagination. My question would be, how many other communities of an equivalent size have the same size planning commission? I like the borough manager's suggestion that we take it down to 5 people. And the other point that I would make is if people had objections to somebody being appointed to the commission, we always allow public testimony at every single assembly meeting, and somebody could speak to that concern. So, the fact that we're appointing them anyway, it seems like why not take away the hurdle of the election process and codify what we're actually doing anyway?
Is there an election cost? If it's
So I didn't think there's an election cost, but we have to wait. We say we're going to wait for an election, and we don't get people to actually apply. I think if we had fewer members on the commission and we said the assembly could appoint them, the assembly ends up approving the decisions that the planning commission makes anyways, and the public also has an opportunity to speak if they had a concern about a particular person being appointed to the planning commission. So I don't see this as taking away a public voice in any way.
Okay, well, if we have new twist on it here, so I would assume to get it on the list of charter amendments, we'd have to vote on it as an assembly.
Can I make a recommendation? Maybe wait till Liz gets back and talk about this. Just give her a chance to make
We've
her
got till
argument.
May.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Just a question goes along with Cindy's. How many in the southeast are elected versus appointed?
That's a good point.
We can find out.
Not that we have to do what other people do,
Right.
but it'd be good to know. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Cindy. Okay, that brings us to 12.02, sales and use taxes PDF. So, okay, come on, work with me here. Up there earlier. Again, this is the change is going to be under section B. Any sales or use tax or change in the rate or exemptions to the sales tax or use tax shall be by ordinance ratified by, and this is the part a majority of the qualified voters, so to go to a vote, of the borough voting on the question. And that will be struck and will be ratified by the borough assembly. So any changes to sales tax, if I understand this proposal right, or use tax, or would this include senior citizen exemptions as well?
Let me speak to the broader issue, really, which is our charter pretty much puts it in the hands of the voters on exemptions, sales tax rates, point of sale, change, anything involved in those areas. It puts it out to a vote of the people. most communities, it's done by the assembly, not by vote of the people. So be it. What does the assembly here in Petersburg want to do? I mean, do you want to change this? Do you want to go through the sales tax and exemption ordinances and figure out which ones you would like to go to the voters individually, or would you want a broader one like what the mayor just read? What we need from a staff perspective is, do you want to go fight this battle on any of these? We've had this discussion numerous times about senior citizens exemption. We don't do point of sales tax here. So for example, if somebody from California comes up here and buys something and has it shipped, they don't pay sales tax here locally. That's pretty much unheard of in the world of sales tax. I mean, you pay sales tax where you buy it. So
that pertain to Amazon?
No, that's internet sales. But I mean, for example, somebody could walk in, if I had a shop selling, I don't know, good whiskey, and had it shipped to California, I wouldn't have to pay sales tax on it. Okay, that's a Petersburg thing. So basically, point of sale, we don't have a point of sale sales tax where anything purchased in our borough, you must pay sales tax on. It doesn't work that way here. So, the shopkeepers will argue to keep that because, in their sense, we have visitor traffic coming through town that want to buy something, and they don't want to take it back with them on an airplane or a ship. They don't. So the shop will say, "Hey, I'll ship it to your house for you, and you don't have to pay sales tax." So that happens throughout the community, and it's a way for them to keep that sale. Again, I don't have numbers to go with this. This is all one of those hearsay type things that people talk about. Jody might be able to speak to it better. But, an example, I bought something from one of the hardware stores I bought it from their online store. It was shipped here. I didn't pay sales tax on it when I picked it up here because I purchased it, quote, online. Okay. There's a lot of stuff like that in our sales tax ordinances, including the senior exemption, the sales tax cap that hasn't been adjusted for many, many years. The broader question is, we could sit down with the sales tax ordinance with the assembly, and do you want to do that? Do you want to go through that whole ordinance and make decisions and say go to the voters, or no, just leave it all alone? Or do you want to go to a much broader base, which would be pretty significant change, going to the charter and saying, get rid of the voter input and put it on the assembly to make those decisions? Still very public with the assembly doing it, but the 7 of you sitting there would be making that decision rather than the voters in that case, which is generally how that's done, but it's different here in Petersburg. That's what we need to know from a staff perspective. How do you want to address this issue, or do you want to address it?
I'm just thinking back on one of our recent elections about removing the senior citizens exemption. Wasn't that on one of them a couple years back? And got a resounding no. But I guess they could come and fill the room.
Well, I take the results of that vote as that the community would prefer the borough in particular to cut services rather than raise revenue. I'm not trying to be, but that's the result of that vote, which is going forward, they would prefer us to scale stuff back more so than the option. And that's fine if that's how it is. We'll manage within that. That's what we're trying to figure out, is does the assembly want to go back and talk about those issues, or just leave it alone?
Is there some way in this process, Steve, that instead of painting this whole thing with a real broad brush, there's a few things that we probably should ratify. If I walk into Juneau and I buy anything in Juneau at the counter and I say, well, I'm just going to ship it home, they charge me sales tax.
Right.
If I call Juneau and say, send it down to me, they don't charge me sales tax.
Right.
So I could see us ratifying some of those things, on this kind of 7-member level. As for taking ownership away from people's ability to tell me how they want this community to look in the future, I don't think I'd be in favor of that. I think if somebody thinks as though that they've paid enough into the system, even though they've been here only 4 or 5 years because they fall into that senior sales tax category, I'd say shame on them, because, and I know a lot of people that continue to pay property tax even though they're senior citizens. I know a lot of people continue to pay sales tax when they're senior citizens because they like the community the way it is. And I want this community to take a really hard look at what we got here and how do they want to support this. I mean, of course, nobody wants to pay any more than they want to, but then the minute their road's not plowed, the minute their sewer backs up, who's going to hear from it? It's going to be us. So anyway, if we could look at this on different levels, I think there's probably some room for improvement, but just to say
that's why
put it all in our hands, then I'm not in favor of that.
And that's what I wanted to ask. I mean, this is a classic one that would take a very long time. That's a complex ordinance, the sales tax piece of it, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. And it's really, how does the Assembly want to address this if you even want to talk about it?
Bob?
Yeah, I'm about the same place. I think one of the strengths of the community is the fact it is open and allows the people to decide what they want, and then we have to adjust accordingly. The other part of that is in the charter, it has a cap. I think it's 10 point some mils, I believe. The people have chosen to raise that in town, but that was their choice. And we do it, and I don't think there's very many communities that have that cap, but ours does, our charter.
You are correct. We're capped both on sales tax, the exemptions, and property tax, and we are running up against that. Our next year's budget will likely involve cuts in areas because we will get really close to those.
And I guess I'd be the same place as that I wouldn't have any problem taking a look at some individual parts of this, that we might want to change, just like Kirk talked about.
So I guess as far as the Borough Assembly having the authority for all of it, it doesn't sound like we're in favor of it at this point. So now we're talking but Bob brought this up, the tax cap, assessment, levy, and collection of property taxes exemptions. The Borough shall provide for the annual assessment, levy, and collection of taxes on property, and then added in would be the tax rate shall be set by the Petersburg Borough Assembly as part of the annual budget process and must be approved by, it says a quorum, but I think that should be a majority, that word, of the Assembly. And cross out that, whatever the other paragraph is. How does everybody feel about this one? Okay?
No.
Anybody? No? Bob?
Well, I'm of the mind that the tax cap really does need to be addressed. It's been in place a long time, and our tax cap, I think, is almost one of the lowest ones in southeast Alaska. And it really does need to be addressed.
I mean, the ideal is a system that's in place that has some kind of, I hate to say escalator, but a way that it can be adjusted without, as inflation occurs or whatever else. But again, the Assembly is going to have to weigh in and say, how do you want to do that? You're right. I mean, the tax cap hasn't been touched for many, many years. It would be a lot higher if it had been adjusted even with just inflation. But it's a big deal here in town. I mean, so particularly, I think, what was it, Jody, I think the last time we looked at it, 75%, 70% of the tax cap is at the fuel dock. So, I mean, in other words, the people taking advantage, we're running up against that is at petrol. And so, I mean, that has a pretty major impact if you change that number.
Raise it. If you raise it down.
The argument I'd have with that is that how far do you got to go to get a tax break lower than you're going to get in Petersburg? You're not going to run to Sitka or Juneau or catch, or Juneau for 12 gallons an hour just to save, a penny a gallon. So, I mean, I think it's a kind of a weak argument. I mean, we all need fuel, and we go to the closest fuel dock. So,
I'm just trying to be open and honest.
Yeah, I understand. I understand where you're coming from, Steve. Yeah, no, I'm I'm just
I
saying.
agree with that, Kurt, but
It's
when
pretty-
people have their boat south and they have 10,000 gallon capacity, they're going to fill their boat up down there before they run up here. And
Well, and they're going to get
probably just
50
price
cents
per
to a
gallon.
dollar. They're going to get a 50 or dollar less per gallon price break, too.
I do agree with the part, the Assembly strongly believes the state of Alaska is responsible for
I know,
funding
but they're
any exemption from taxation is mandated by the state, and there's our, property tax. So, is this something we want to have on the ballot?
Or more discussion.
Or more discussion before the 15th?
More discussion, please.
Definitely.
Okay, so, services provided by service area, and this is the next one, the last one. Proposed change, I don't know why this isn't loading the particulars up there, second time it does. This is an ordinance proposing an amendment to the Home Rule Charter of the Petersburg Borough to allow the Assembly by ordinance to permit the exercise of certain powers on a non-area-wide or other basis and directing that the proposed charter amendment be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. This is the one that was talking about the harbors, wasn't it, Debbie, in particular? That's why we're voting
Correct.
this?
It would, yes.
Giving Kupanoff
Changing the
Power.
wording would allow, that would be one thing that it would allow, is that Kupanoff could own their own dock.
And Bob, you had some concerns with this?
I have heartburn with this one. Is it the way I interpret it, and I haven't studied our attorney's response, but it essentially what it does is then it allows the Assembly to go back under the 9 or 11 items, and I don't have those in front of me, to decide whether they want to do it on a borough or less than a borough basis. And I don't remember all of them, but there are library, the 9.
Page 80 if you want to look.
And those, and I got heartburn with that. I would rather see us, I agree with the idea of being able to transfer stuff to Kupanoff or some other entity or to be able to deal with them. But can we come up with some wording that's specific to that rather than to allow the Assembly to go back and to then make decisions of not providing those basic services that we had put into the charter? I look at the charter as a contract with the people, what we put in here. And for crying out loud, I think we ought to maintain those services should be provided borough-wide that are in there.
But don't we provide as a borough some services that aren't required of us in the charter? Like garbage collection, snow removal, outside of service area 1?
Yeah, we do. Well,
So,
but what this would, the way I interpret this, and as I said, I haven't had a chance to read, the way I interpret it, Mark, is that what this would do is allow us to take some of the other things of which we said we would do borough-wide.
Take them out.
Take them out. And that's what I'm objecting to.
Okay.
If I'm hearing you right, Bob, that it would then give the Assembly power to no longer provide 911 service, medical, stuff like some of those bones of it.
Yeah, to less than borough-wide. And it would give us the power to change that. And I don't want that power, and I would like to see it maintained that way.
You'd rather see that focusing more on Kupanoff, the bones of that, so that we can find a way to give them the dock if need
Yes,
be.
exactly.
I concur. Thank you.
Yeah, just take that one issue,
Yeah.
which is, I think is important is for us to address, is to take that out of our charter so they can take ownership. I mean, they did the paperwork and
I agree 100% with that.
ownership. Okay, Deb, did you get that?
I did, yep. Did everybody read Sarah's? You should, we can talk about it. If you can bring it up again if after you read Sarah's thing that I gave you.
Yeah.
Yes, because this is,
It'll be on the list for discussion.
yes.
Yeah. So anyway, it sounds like, at some point when we get a bigger list of charter changes, and we're going to probably have to have a special meeting to address that, I would think, before May, what's the date?
15th.
We have to have it done before then, because that's.
Way before then.
Norway is about 5 days before, after that. Okay, any other discussion items? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mayor, can I ask one quick question? Did you guys want me to draft an amendment to Chapter 2.44, Initiative and Referendum? This is not charter, this is just code. Should I draft an ordinance, amending it as discussed on this piece of paper and bring it next meeting for its first reading?
Wasn't that what we?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, thank you.
No problem.
Too many different things.
Right.
Okay, so, there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.